Block 1. The case that challenged modern archaeology. In the heart of Egypt, there are stories that defy time. Some sleep beneath the sand. Others are born again within a child. In 2018, in a small village 40 kilometers from Cairo, a team of researchers heard about a 7-year-old boy who drew pyramids with details no schoolbook could explain. At first, it seemed like a local curiosity, until the drawings began matching theories still debated within the scientific community itself. The boy, named Ilias, lived a simple life: a makeshift school, a family of artisans, no television, no internet. Yet his papers were filled with lines, measurements, angles, and symbols resembling architectural blueprints. His teachers couldn't explain it. That's when the story caught the attention of a French documentarian working on a project about ancient Egyptian engineering techniques. He traveled to the village with 2 archaeologists and a child psychologist. What they found went far beyond imagination. When asked what he was drawing, Ilias answered naturally, "It's the place where I worked. I helped lift the stones." The phrase sounded innocent until one archaeologist, Dr. Fatih al-Masri, noticed something unsettling. In one of Ilias's drawings, he had sketched an internal gallery of the Great Pyramid, a chamber that had only recently been detected through muon scanning, an advanced imaging technique used in 2017 to reveal hidden cavities. How could he possibly know that? The team requested permission to film. The boy appeared calm, almost too calm amid so many questions. He spoke of a great field of stone and men singing for the sun to rise. Nothing mystical in his tone, only the serenity of someone describing what he knew. If you believe some mysteries challenge logic itself, follow this channel and turn on notifications. What comes next might change how you understand time and what we call memory. The group decided to test him. They showed him images of different pyramids. Ilias pointed to the pyramid of Meidum and said, "That one fell because the master didn't finish the top. It was missing a balancing stone." The researchers exchanged glances. Historical records show that the pyramid of Meidum collapsed during construction, likely due to a structural misalignment at the summit. But such information isn't available in any material accessible to a child from that region. The psychologist tried to interpret it symbolically, perhaps a product of subconscious imagination. But the boy continued describing technical procedures: internal ramps, wet sand to reduce friction, linen ropes soaked in vegetable oil. All of it matched hypotheses later tested by modern engineers. The case began to be documented, and gradually the scientists realized they were facing something that didn't fit simple categories. It wasn't mere talent. It didn't sound like a child's fantasy. In one recorded interview, archaeologist Fatih al-Masri asked, "Ilias, who taught you this?" He replied, staring intently, "No one. I just remembered. I was a builder of the king." An uneasy silence followed. The team felt the weight of it. The boy couldn't have access to such technical knowledge, yet spoke precisely about proportions, weights, and even the names of tools used in ancient Egypt. Intrigued, the psychologist proposed a scientific approach. She ran tests on memory and perception. Ilias scored within the normal range for his age, except for one anomaly. His spatial visualization capacity was extraordinary, exceeding that of most adult engineers. Documentarian Pierre Marchand decided to include the case in his report. Upon returning to Paris, he presented the boy's drawings to an engineering team at the École des Ponts. The verdict was astonishing. The proportions correspond to real stress and lifting models. The average error margin is below 3%. The images quietly circulated among universities and experimental archaeology forums. Some called it coincidence, others evidence of something science could not yet grasp. But there was something even more intriguing. During one conversation, the boy mentioned a hidden place inside the Great Pyramid where the master kept the pharaoh's light. That description aligned perfectly with one of the yet unexplained voids detected by modern scanners. The phenomenon became known as the Ilias project, studied by researchers from 4 countries. Each sought a plausible explanation: genetic memory, cryptanasia, statistical coincidence. But the deeper they investigated, the greater the mystery grew. During a follow-up visit, the boy was taken to an exhibition on ancient Egypt at a museum in Cairo. When he saw a mural depicting workers at the pyramids, he stopped and whispered something in archaic Arabic. A guide, fluent in hieroglyphic expressions, translated. He said, "That is where the master sleeps, and the work never ends." The guide turned pale. The phrase was identical to a proverb found in the tomb of Hemiunu, the royal architect of Khufu. Coincidence or memory? The scientists continued documenting the case. But each new discovery blurred the line between science and spirituality. Could the human mind preserve traces of past lives? Or was this a form of collective memory that surfaced under certain conditions? Questions multiplied faster than answers. While the scientific world remained divided, the boy returned to his simple routine. He still drew, though he preferred silence now. When asked how he felt looking at the pyramids, he simply said, "It's beautiful, but it hurts here." He placed his hand on the left side of his chest. Pierre wrote in his diary, "There's something in his eyes that doesn't belong to childhood," as if part of him lives in another era, and his current body is just the physical memory of a forgotten builder. In the years that followed, the Ilias case became one of the most discussed subjects among archaeologists and consciousness researchers. To some, it was more than a historical enigma. It was proof that perhaps the human soul itself is the real archive of history. But one question remained inevitable. If everything the boy remembered was true, then what else did he remember that no one has yet discovered? Comment below. Do you believe the human mind can truly store memories from other existences?
Block 2. The Scientific Regression. After Ilias's case reached the international press, the story became a battleground between reason and mystery. On one side stood archaeologists and engineers fascinated by the precision of his drawings. On the other, skeptics convinced it was all coincidence and suggestion. That's when a neuroscience institute in Cairo decided to conduct a formal investigation. The team included neurologists, psychologists, linguists, and a physicist specializing in brain pattern analysis. Their goal was simple: to discover whether the boy's mind contained any anomaly that could explain his impossible memories. The first sessions took place in a white, sterile room far from the desert heat. Ilias was calm, curious, unafraid. As doctors prepared the equipment, he looked at the wires and sensors and asked, "Is this to see if I still remember?" Dr. Al-Masri, who had followed the case from the beginning, replied, "It's to see where what you remember comes from." The scans revealed something unusual. During imaging tests, the regions associated with episodic memory and spatial visualization activated intensely whenever the boy saw images of the pyramids, far beyond what had ever been recorded in children his age. It was as if his brain were reacting not to an external stimulus, but to an authentic recollection. If you believe some mysteries blur the line between science and spirit, follow this channel and turn on notifications, because what comes next crosses that boundary. The team decided to perform a controlled experiment. With parental consent, they subjected Ilias to a light regression session monitored by brain sensors and independent observers. No hypnosis, no mysticism, only a guided relaxation and gentle memory induction. The goal, to understand his neurological patterns while he described these supposed memories. The psychologist spoke softly. "Imagine an ancient place. What do you see?" The boy stayed silent for several seconds. Then he began describing what sounded like a construction site: large stone blocks, ropes, and men shouting instructions. With each word, his hippocampus and prefrontal cortex lit up, the exact brain regions tied to real memory and motor planning. But what most caught their attention was his emotional response. His heart rate rose, his eyes darted rapidly as if tracking invisible movements. When the psychologist asked his name in that time, he answered, "Meru Ka." Dr. Al-Masri nearly dropped his clipboard. That same name had appeared in Ilias's drawings, and more astonishingly, Meru Ka was a historically documented supervisor of construction during Egypt's 4th dynasty, whose tomb had been discovered in 1948. Coincidence or memory? The scientists kept their composure. They avoided rash conclusions. But the recordings showed something undeniable. Ilias wasn't inventing. He described with steady tone and exact vocabulary the layout of stone placements, the tools used, and the way workers measured distance by the sun, none of which existed in his everyday language. When he awoke, the boy remembered nothing he said. He only asked, "Did they finish it?" A simple, melancholy phrase, later noted in every report. In the following days, the Institute sent the data to external analysis. Neurological patterns did not match any indicators of deceit or induced fantasy. The lead physicist wrote, "We found no cognitive anomaly. His brain reacts as if reliving, not imagining." News spread fast. Some called it pseudoscience. Others hailed it as empirical evidence of reincarnation. But what truly divided opinion was the leaked footage of the session, a child describing advanced construction techniques known only to specialists. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities intervened. They feared the case might grow politically sensitive. Egypt, after all, is a land where science and faith coexist in fragile balance. A government task force was formed to assess the phenomenon officially. Among them was Dr. Samira El-Haddad, an expert in memory and trauma. She believed the boy might have unconsciously absorbed fragments of information, overheard conversations, documentary clips, and that his brain had reorganized them into a lived memory. The theory seemed reasonable until Ilias was brought to the Pyramid of Khufu. The visit was part of the study. They wanted to observe his reaction inside the real monument. When he entered the Great Gallery, the boy stopped. He looked up and said quietly, "It used to be brighter. The light came from above." The researchers took notes. That chamber, now artificially lit, had originally been aligned with openings designed to reflect sunlight during the equinox, a technical detail known only to experts. Dr. Samira watched closely. She tried to maintain her professional detachment, but something inside her shifted. The child didn't seem amazed. He seemed nostalgic, like someone returning to a place he had once worked for years. Back at the lab, the scientists reviewed the recordings. They noticed that while inside the pyramid, Ilias had made hand gestures resembling the use of a measuring cord, identical to those found in depictions of ancient engineer priests performing alignment rituals. Coincidence again? Dr. Samira began to reconsider. In a later interview, she admitted, "Perhaps we're studying the wrong phenomenon. It's not about the boy's past. It's about the limits of human memory." The case soon attracted international attention. A team from Oxford University offered to replicate the tests using high-resolution functional MRI. They wanted to see if during the recollections, areas tied to imagination activated, which would dismiss the possibility of true memory. The opposite was resulted. Imaginative centers remained neutral. Activity focused instead on factual recall and associative language regions. One British scientist summarized it plainly. He remembers like an adult describing a real event, not like a child inventing a story. The repercussions were immediate. Scientific journals requested access to the data. TV networks offered interviews, but the family refused. The father said, "We don't want fame. We just want him to have peace." Meanwhile, the Egyptian team continued analyzing every word spoken during the regression. One passage stood out. Ilias mentioned a path of sand leading to a river of stones, where boats unloaded massive blocks. He described ramps of wood and wet sand used to reduce friction, a technique confirmed by archaeological discoveries in 2014 on Wadi al-Jarfi on the Red Sea coast. How could he know? For skeptics, it was coincidence. For believers, it was a fragment of a soul resurfacing. But the boy himself seemed indifferent to the debate. When asked how he felt while remembering, he replied simply, "It's like I forgot to finish something." Journalist Pierre Marchand noted in his diary, "Maybe the past doesn't end when we die. Maybe it ends when someone, someday, remembers." The second report from the Cairo Neuroscience Institute concluded, "The case remains without conventional explanation. Long-term monitoring and interdisciplinary study are recommended." But the story of Ilias was far from over. In the months that followed, a group of archaeologists decided to test one of the techniques the boy had described inside a controlled laboratory environment. The outcome would leave them speechless. And if it really worked? Comment below. Do you believe science will ever be able to prove what the soul is already trying to tell us?
Block 3. The evidence beneath the sand. Science moves through questions. But sometimes, a question comes from a place so improbable it feels like poetry disguised as fact. That's what the Ilias case had become, a question mark suspended between heaven and sand. Months after the monitored regression, a group of archaeologists decided to test the construction techniques the boy had described during his sessions. The initiative came from an independent team affiliated with the Luxor Museum, led by Dr. Ahmet Rashid, an Egyptian engineer known for his skepticism. He told the press, "I don't believe in reincarnation, but I believe in methods. If the boy described a process, we can test it." The proposal was simple. Reconstruct, on a smaller scale, the transport and lifting method that Ilias had spoken of. They recreated the environmental conditions of the Giza Plateau, sand, wood, and tools identical to those used 4,000 years ago. No modern equipment allowed. Meanwhile, Ilias watched from afar. His family had moved to a nearby town, trying to escape the media frenzy, but scientific curiosity had not faded. The boy remained under medical observation, though his life was slowly returning to normal. The experiment began at sunrise, just as he had described.
Limestone blocks weighing 1 ton were placed on inclined ramps. The engineers dampened the sand, as the boy had instructed, and used linen ropes soaked in vegetable oil. At first, the results were disappointing. The blocks sunk or slipped before reaching the top. But after some adjustments, something unexpected happened. With the right slope and precise amount of water, friction dropped dramatically. The blocks slid upward with astonishing ease. The team recorded the event and sent the results for verification. Dr. Rashid, the skeptic himself, finally admitted before the cameras, "I don't believe in reincarnation, but I believe in methods. If the boy described a process, we can test it." That phrase ignited a new wave of debate. TV channels, science journals, and archaeology forums began to view the case in a different light. What if the boy's memories somehow preserved ancient knowledge long lost to time? If you believe some mysteries go beyond reason, follow this channel and turn on notifications, because what comes next transcends science and touches the most human part of us. The Historical Engineering Institute of Paris replicated the experiment with controlled measurements. The outcome was identical. The technique Ilias described reduced manual effort by up to 40%. It was plausible, efficient, and perfectly aligned with the conditions of ancient Egypt. But something even stranger emerged. In one of Ilias's drawings, a ramp curved inward into the pyramid, forming an unusual angle. When compared with laser scans of the Great Pyramid, the team noticed a striking alignment. There were signs of unmapped corridors exactly where he had indicated. One archaeologist whispered while overlaying the images, "If he's right, there's more pyramid beneath the pyramid." The idea was too radical to accept publicly, but behind closed doors, the hypothesis spread among researchers worldwide. Could a child have revealed a fragment of ancient engineering from an ancient civilization? Meanwhile, Ilias began to change. Doctors noticed him growing more introspective, speaking less, drawing less, yet observing with an almost adult awareness. During one consultation, Dr. Samira asked how he felt knowing his memories were being tested. He answered with a sentence that would haunt the room. "I just want to know if we did it right this time." Silence followed. To scientists, it was just a phrase, but to those who believed in reincarnation, it sounded like the echo of a soul seeking redemption. The experiment's findings were published in specialized journals. Some praised it as a technical breakthrough, others dismissed it as coincidence. But its real impact lay at the fragile border between science and spirituality, and that border was starting to crumble. Pierre Marchand, the French documentarian, returned to Egypt to capture the aftermath. In an interview, he asked Rashid if he was still a skeptic. The engineer smiled and said, "I'm an engineer. I work with measurements. But sometimes something immeasurable seeps into the calculations. When that happens, we call it luck. Maybe this boy is just the memory of the ancients' luck." The quote went viral. The Ilias case began inspiring new research into what neuroscientists now call non-local memory, a controversial hypothesis suggesting that part of human information might exist beyond the physical brain, stored in a collective quantum field. A bold theory, yet curiously aligned with the spiritual belief that the soul preserves records beyond life itself. As the debate expanded, the boy seemed to withdraw. He told his mother he wanted to forget everything and just play like the others. But some nights he still woke up trembling, saying that he dreamed of moving stones and men shouting in an ancient tongue. Dr. Samira visited him one last time before the family moved again. She asked him if he remembered anything new.
Ilias thought for a moment and replied, "I remember a man watching the sun, saying that everything we built was for him, but I don't remember who he was." Pierre Marchand wrote in his diary, "Maybe the pyramids weren't built merely to last, but so that one day someone would remember." Footage of the experiments was later shown at an international conference on experimental archaeology. At the end of the presentation, the audience fell silent. Among them, a Japanese scientist stood up and said, "I don't know if I believe in reincarnation, but if knowledge can survive in a child's mind, then perhaps what we call the past has never truly ended." And right there, amid the cold logic of academia, the Ilias story stopped being just a scientific case and became a mirror, a reflection of the question humanity has asked since the dawn of time. What are we, if not the sum of everything we have ever been? Comment below. Do you believe knowledge can travel through time, as if the soul itself were the true library of human history?
Block 4. The encounter with the past. Sometimes science comes so close to the soul that it forgets where one ends and the other begins. After the experiments in Luxor, the Ilias case entered a new chapter, no longer made of measurements or maps, but of silences and glances. The family had moved to Alexandria, trying to start over. The boy was now 8. He went to school, played in the yard, but still carried something no one could name. At times, he would stand before the sea, as if listening to voices rising from the waves. It was then that Dr. Samira El-Haddad received a call from his father. "He's drawing again," he said. The new sketches were different. Not pyramids, but a group of men carrying a sarcophagus toward a temple. In the center, a child with his hands raised to the sky. Samira traveled immediately. When she arrived, she found Ilias more mature, but with the same serene eyes. They sat together on the terrace, and she asked if he knew who the child in the drawing was. He answered, "It's me, but not the me I am now." It was the first time he had spoken about his past without being asked. During their talk, Samira noticed that he no longer remembered technical details. The words that once sounded precise were now replaced by emotions. He said he felt guilt for something he didn't understand, that he often dreamed of a man falling from a stone scaffold and would wake up crying. The scientist took notes, but for the first time, she stopped being just a researcher. What if memory isn't proof, but a plea for forgiveness, she wondered. If you believe there are mysteries that defy logic, follow this channel and turn on notifications, because what comes next is the most human part of this story. Months later, Samira decided to take the boy to a new site, the excavations at Saqqara, where archaeologists had recently opened the tomb of an engineer from Khufu's era. The name carved on the wall made her heartbeat quicken. Meru Ka. The scientific team chose not to tell Ilias in advance. They wanted to see if any spontaneous reaction would occur. When they arrived, the boy stayed silent, observing the hieroglyphs on the walls. Then, suddenly, he knelt and placed his hand on the sand. "I told them the light came through here," he murmured. The researchers exchanged glances. One of the architects explained that they had indeed found a solar duct connecting that exact point to the outside, a lighting system used during royal rituals. The scene was filmed, but never made public. The Egyptian government feared it would provoke religious interpretations. After the visit, Ilias changed. For days he remained quiet. He didn't draw or speak. His mother said he spent hours looking at his own hands, as if trying to recognize them. One night he told her, "I think I'm done." And he smiled, for the first time in months. To Samira, that smile meant everything. She wrote in her report, "Memory seems to have fulfilled a function of psychological reintegration. The child is freed by remembering." Pierre Marchand returned to document this phase. His new film, The Echo of the Sand, showed not pyramids, but people. The boy's mother, the scientists, their silences. When asked why he had shifted focus, he replied, "Because the mystery isn't about Egypt, it's about what memory does to us." The documentary won awards in Europe and was shown as a study of transpersonal memory. But in Egypt, it remained a delicate subject. While the world debated, Dr. Samira decided to close her research. In their final meeting, she handed the boy a blank notebook, for you to draw whatever you like, but this time about the now. He flipped through the pages and said, "Maybe now I can forget." She smiled and asked, "Is forgetting bad?" He replied, "No, it's when the memory has done what it came to do." Those words became the emotional closure of the entire study. The scientists archived the case as unexplained by conventional means, yet with profound therapeutic impact. In time, Ilias went on to live like any other child. The memories faded, though some nights he still spoke in ancient Arabic while asleep. Once he said, "The king gives thanks." His mother wept and smiled at the same time. Pierre's final note read, "Archaeologists can unearth stones, but it is memory that unearths the soul." Perhaps the story of Ilias was never about proving something to science, but about reminding us that science itself was born from the desire to understand the inexplicable. And so, between fact and faith, the case became a mirror where everyone saw what they needed to see. A mystery for some, a healing for others, and a story for those who still believe that life doesn't end in time, it only changes form. Comment below. Do you believe that remembering is a way of healing from the past?
Bloco 5. O legado da areia. O tempo é um arquiteto silencioso. Constrói e destrói. Mas às vezes deixa portas abertas. E o caso de Ilias, o menino que dizia lembrar como as pirâmides foram erguidas, tornou-se exatamente isso, uma porta entre o que a ciência pode medir e o que o coração ainda tenta entender. Anos se passaram. A areia voltou a cobrir os rastros da história. Mas nas universidades, nos fóruns de arqueologia e nas rodas de espiritualistas, o nome do menino continuava a ser citado. O caso, documentado e arquivado sob o título Fenômeno de Memória Anômala, Egito, 2018, seguia intrigando pesquisadores pelo mundo. A doutora Samira El-Haddad, agora professora de neurociência em Oxford, usava o estudo de Ilias como exemplo em suas aulas sobre consciência. Ela começava dizendo: "Não sei se acredita em vidas passadas, mas sei que há memórias que não pertencem apenas a esta vida." O documentarista Pierre Marchand continuou acompanhando o caso à distância. Em uma entrevista para a BBC, afirmou: "Filmamos tudo buscando respostas, mas o que encontramos foi algo mais sutil, a lembrança como uma força curativa." Disse que, ao editar as imagens, percebeu que a história não era sobre um milagre, mas sim sobre reconciliação, entre razão e mistério, entre o que se prova e o que se sente. Se você acredita que há mistérios que desafiam a lógica, siga este canal e ative as notificações. O que vem agora é o fechamento de uma história que talvez nunca termine. No Egito, um novo projeto arqueológico retomou os experimentos inspirados nos desenhos de Ilias. O Dr. Ahmed Rashid, que um dia duvidara de tudo, coordenava as escavações. Ele afirmava diante das câmeras: "Não sei quem esse menino foi, mas sei que suas palavras reacenderam nossa curiosidade científica. Isso, por si só, já é um legado." Durante uma das escavações, os trabalhadores encontraram uma pequena placa de calcário coberta por areia. Nela havia inscrições danificadas, mas uma frase ainda legível: "Aquele que se lembrar do trabalho, renascerá para terminá-lo." Os arqueólogos não atribuíram relação direta com o caso, mas para alguns era coincidência demais. A frase parecia ecoar tudo o que Elias havia dito, como se o tempo confirmasse sua própria narrativa. Enquanto isso, a família vivia em paz. O menino cresceu, estudou engenharia civil e se tornou um jovem reservado. Nunca quis dar entrevistas. Quando perguntado sobre o seu passado, respondia apenas: "Não lembro mais, e talvez seja melhor assim." Mas um detalhe chamava a atenção de quem o conhecia. Ele desenhava por hobby. Nada sobre pirâmides, mas sempre estruturas perfeitas, com medidas harmoniosas. Certa vez um colega de faculdade comentou: "Você tem um senso de proporção incrível. Onde aprendeu isso?" Elias sorriu e respondeu: "Talvez eu só tenha lembrado antes dos outros." O caso, ao longo dos anos, inspirou livros, documentários e estudos sobre a chamada memória de acesso profundo, um conceito que investiga se certos indivíduos conseguem tocar informações não registradas conscientemente. Alguns cientistas chamaram de ressonância cultural inconsciente, outros de memória transgeracional. Mas todos concordavam em uma coisa: o cérebro de Ilias desafiava explicações convencionais. Em 2027, uma conferência internacional sobre consciência foi realizada em Genebra. Samira apresentou novamente o caso. Entre os slides, uma frase simples: "Nem toda lembrança é pessoal. Algumas pertencem à própria humanidade." O auditório ficou em silêncio. Na plateia, jovens estudantes de diversas áreas, biologia, filosofia, teologia, física, ouviam com atenção. Um deles perguntou: "Professora, a senhora acha que ele realmente viveu aquilo?" Ela pensou por um instante antes de responder: "Talvez a questão não seja se ele viveu, mas por que nós precisamos tanto entender." A resposta ecoou como conclusão de uma jornada. A ciência busca verdades, a alma, sentido. E talvez as duas coisas não sejam tão diferentes. Naquele mesmo ano, o documentarista Pierre lançou um curta chamado A Última Pedra, narrado em voz baixa e pausada, mostrando imagens do deserto ao entardecer. A última frase do filme dizia: "Talvez as pirâmides não sejam monumentos para os mortos, mas lembretes para os vivos, de que a memória é o único material que o tempo não consegue destruir." O curta ganhou prêmios e reacendeu o debate. E, ironicamente, trouxe novos cientistas para estudar o caso que começou com o ceticismo de um engenheiro e os desenhos de uma criança. Hoje, passados mais de 10 anos, o nome de Ilias ainda aparece em citações acadêmicas. Mas, fora dos laboratórios, ele vive uma vida simples. Dizem que trabalha em projetos de arquitetura sustentável e evita qualquer referência ao passado. Mas, certa vez, em uma entrevista breve para um jornal local, deixou escapar algo enigmático. Quando o repórter perguntou se ainda sonhava com o Egito antigo, ele respondeu: "Não, agora sonho com o que ainda não construímos." A frase viralizou. Para uns, era poesia. Para outros, a confissão velada de alguém que terminou o que começou há milhares de anos. E assim, o caso se encerra como começou, entre o som do vento e o silêncio da areia. Os cientistas ainda discutem hipóteses.
Os espiritualistas falam em reencarnação. Mas talvez o verdadeiro mistério não esteja no menino nem nas pirâmides, mas sim no próprio ato de lembrar. Porque recordar, seja de uma vida, de um sonho ou de uma ideia, é a forma mais humana de desafiar o esquecimento. O repórter Pierre escreveu sua última anotação sobre o caso. Há coisas que não precisamos provar,